PMS, pregnancy, menopause. Being a woman is a lot. Ollie supports you and yours with expert solutions for every age and life stage. They just launched 2 new products exclusively at Walmart. Period Hero combats bloat, mood swings, and more during PMS. And Balance Perimeno to support hormonal balance, mood, and metabolism during perimenopause. Grab yours at ollie.com.
Ollie!
These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
The kind of old-fashioned cop who preferred working the streets and making arrests to taking tests toward promotion. He was the closest thing New York had to a Dirty Harry.
Here's your host, Bo Dietl.
Welcome to One Tough Podcast. I'm joined here as always by my producer and friend and assistant and partner and what's your title at my office?
Chief of Staff.
Chief of Staff. I like Chief of Staff. Forget about secretary. You're not my secretary. You're my partner and Chief of Staff, Carlo. And today, Carlo brought me a gentleman named Brian Brown. Brian's an author, Emmy Award-winning journalist. You won an Emmy?
I won 15 Emmys.
Wow, I like that.
Yeah.
And professor at Fordham University. Great school in the Bronx. Great law school up there. Are you a lawyer?
I'm not a lawyer. I know lawyers.
Okay.
I know some good lawyers.
Okay. How many books have you written?
This is the third book. This is my third book.
And what was the other books you wrote?
So the first book was TV, a novel.
Yeah.
It was based on a live television director named Cesar Fortunato.
Yeah.
Almost got made into a movie. Mm-hmm. I wish I knew you then because I would have gotten it to Scorsese, your buddy. Then I wrote a book called Ring Force, a children's book. So I did a lot of Olympics.
Yeah.
And so it was a kid's book with an Olympic theme. And then this book, someone is out to get us, a not-so-brief history of Cold War paranoia and madness, which you lived.
I lived, and I cannot tell a lie. I'm not going to tell you I read the book, but I did read excerpts, and there's some really in-depth questions that I think we'll have a lively discussion because I lived it. So I have my own reality feelings about it, and I respect what you've done in this book, but that's an opinion because you didn't live it.
Well, I lived some of it. I'm not
Come
that
on,
young.
1957. 60s. What were you? Where were you?
All right, so here's my first.
Where were you in 57?
Oh, 50. Oh,
you and your mom.
No, I guess maybe.
But okay, so we're gonna get.
Yes,
I want to go back to the
it.
Emmy Awards first.
Yeah.
What kind of Emmy Awards did you win?
So I worked on 12 different Olympic broadcasts, and all of the Emmys are associated with the Olympics, a couple of them for writing. So first Olympics I worked was 1988 in Seoul, South Korea.
Yeah.
The last Olympics I worked was 2012, London, and then there were 10 of them in between those. So
Emmys meaning what? What did you do to win an Emmy? Were you behind the production side? Were you directing? What were you doing?
So the last Emmy I won was for writing. These are the sports Emmys, so not quite as highfalutin as the primetime Emmys.
So you got them, like you didn't get them in front of camera. They just handed you the Emmy.
No.
That's the ones they give out. Like
no. They have a big ceremony, and it's the real thing. The Emmys are big.
Yeah.
They don't.
That's quite.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So the last Emmy I got was for writing the opening film of the 2012 London Games. Mm-hmm. So I wrote the script. It was voiced by Emily Blunt and Ian McGregor.
Wow.
I wrote
Goodman, Roger Goodman.
Now that's an ABC name.
Yeah, but he did Olympics.
He did. So
he's a old friend of mine. We were going to do something together, and Roger Goodman, quite a nice fella, and he has a lot of credibility, credentials, Emmys and stuff too.
So the ABC bunch, the Roone Arledge bunch, I worked for Dick Ebersol, who was the guy who was taught by Roone Arledge. Yeah. So ABC.
I knew Dick too.
I'm sure. I'm sure there's virtually almost nobody famous.
I don't know.
I mentioned that you probably don't know.
I just know everybody, and it's the truth.
You do. So Dick, ABC established, ABC energized. ABC did the sort of they built the edifice on which the Olympics was built, and Roone Arledge had to tell that story, had to make it exciting for the American. So that was an ABC thing, and then NBC kind of bought it and took over.
And then NBC is today's go-to place for the Olympics, and that's
Correct.
very nice.
Yeah.
All right, fuck the Olympics. Okay, let's talk about you.
Yeah.
Okay, why did you turn into writing and journalism? What reason did you go into that?
Well,
instead of being a prize fighter or some shit.
So I went to Columbia here in New York on the fabulous Morningside Heights, and I worked in the college paper, the Columbia Daily Spectator, and I always wanted to get into newspaper work at first. Mm-hmm. And my first job was a copy boy at the New York Times. I worked at the New York Times, worked on the foreign desk.
They were on 44th Street?
At the time, they're 43rd.
43rd.
Yeah, on 43rd, before they moved into the new building.
Huh.
My first memory of working at the New York Times was in 1978. I was a copy boy. This was when I was still in college.
78, copy boy.
Right,
guys.
78, New York. I worked the overnight shift, the 7 to 3, the lobster shift.
Yeah.
Nightside.
So New York, Times Square, 1978. I was living in New Jersey at the time, and I would run at 3 in the morning. I would run from 43rd there between 7th and 8th to the parking lot over on 10th. I would run because I'd be asked for dates in this very menacing way by very tall African-American men dressed in women's clothing who would speak in a baritone voice.
You were probably cute as a young boy.
I was cute.
Yeah.
I had curly hair.
Oh my God! You would have been like a
date.
You would have been like a poo-poo platter for some of these.
I would be a poo-poo platter.
Transvestilites.
Yes.
What do they call them now? Transvestite. What do they call these things? Oh, okay. I'm very politically incorrect, Carlo. I call them a transvestite, transformers, whatever the hell you want to call them. I really don't give a flying crap about it. Okay. Point is, they chased you. Go ahead. Those things.
Yes, and so, but I was fast.
Yeah,
and I would run. But people. The city, New York City in the 1970s?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Excuse me. Moi was saving New York City in the 70s.
I'm sure you were.
I was starting to highlight I was one of the original decoys that I would dress up like you, and I'd be walking around with my long hair, and these transformers would come after me. But you know what they'd do to me? I'd have a wallet to watch on. They'd rob me. And I'd let them rob me. And I'd say, give me my wallet back. And they go, F off, punk. I said, no, Mr. Punk to you. Boom! I crack them, lock their ass up for robbing me on the street. I was a decoy. 500 times I got locked. I was hospitalized 30 times. Stabbed, shot at.
This is not fair. You were able to rack up so many arrests. The city was the Wild West in the 1970s.
And I
That's
counted them
unfair
up.
because
I know
because you
it was too easy.
That all night.
It was too friggin' easy. You're right there.
City was a very scary place.
To bring it down, it was a scary place in the 70s. Not scary to me. I got robbed one time. 7 times in one door. It was 588th Avenue. It was an aluminum doorway. I'll never forget. But I had my backup teams. As they were robbing me, I would make sure that they do it real fast. I'd let the guy walk around the block so no one would see it. Then I'd grab him, get him in the head, like, boom, punch him a couple times. Backup team, collar him. You got him for robbing my wallet. This guy here, he robbed my chain. And then we'd put him in a van. We had the windows all blacked out. And I would store up the nuts like a squirrel. And I'd store up the nuts. You know what the nuts were? These pricks that were robbing me, the son of a bitches. One night, 7 times, one doorway, I got mugged. Bo Deedle got mugged at 588th Avenue 7 times in one night.
So that's 7 arrests.
Yeah, well, I had quite a few, but the thing was that...
No, you were a detective at that time.
I was,
right.
I wasn't standing in a fucking uniform.
You're undercover detective now.
Yeah. Now, okay, let's do something because that was so we understand you running for your life, working for the Times. But what basically is this whole interview is about this book,
right,
which is a very interesting thing because I went through it. Like I said, I feared being attacked by the Russians. So let's go right into that about the Cold War. Now, let's bring the people who are listening. We got a lot of listeners. The Cold War was the war that occurred after World War II, after we lobbed the nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And then you say something in the book again, which I have a little bit of problem with, because I lost 2 uncles in Iwo Jima, Uncle Frankie, Uncle Johnny, and the 4th Marine Division. And these little snail creeps, they were hidden in the ground, and they were ready to blow themselves up. They were ready to take those kamikazes and go into our ships and Tora, 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 blow. So the reality of what it would have taken to take Japan, we're going right into it, because that's part of the Cold War, am I correct?
Yeah.
Because we're rounding out the end of World War II when we lobbed 2 nuclear bombs on near Nagasaki and Hiroshima. You're saying in the book that it was not necessary? And I'd like to have that little debate with you now.
Yeah, let's have that
because
debate.
I'm going to tell you something right now, and I'll give you some more statistics about, you ever heard of Bataan? The March in Bataan?
Oh, yeah.
You're an educated guy.
Yeah.
And how many Americans were involved and how many survived? We were dealing with probably as bad, if not worse, than these Muslim fanatics. And to take the island of Japan at that time and fight on the streets, they say 1 million lives would have been lost. I concur, maybe more. So my point is, if we didn't lob those 2 nuclear bombs, we didn't know what we were lobbing. It was Fat Boy, right? Fat Boy.
Fat Boy was one of them, right?
Yeah, Fat Boy.
Right.
And who was the guy? I got the model of that B-29 in my office.
Tibbets?
Yeah, Tibbets. And
Tibbets
I got a signed plane in my office by Tibbets.
Flew the Enola Gay. Right.
So my point is, right now, this war was not really winding down when you have people that are fanatics. And at that point, the Emperor of Japan and all those psychopathic soldiers there who would die rather than surrender, I have a problem with that. And you know what? If I was Truman, I don't know, lob those. I would have hit one more while we were at it. Hit Tokyo while we were at it on the way out.
Okay. So well, history... The judgment of history is often a bit harsh, and I before Iwo Jima, there was the poor Marines. They would attack these islands, and the Japanese the way the Japanese fought battles was you're not taking any of us prisoner. So long before there was Iwo Jima, there was the battle in Saipan and Tinian.
Yes.
So Saipan got it started, and Saipan is you're tossing 10,000 Marines at a beach. There's 30,000 Japanese on the island, and 5,000 of those Marines aren't going to leave, and none of the 30,000 Japanese are leaving, and so you're right. The Japanese were fanatical. They were horrible. They were barbaric. All true. However, by 1945, let's go to Potsdam. So Harry Truman is in Potsdam, and Harry Truman knows a lot of stuff. And Harry Truman's he's a smart guy. He's a decent guy. He also has just been handed the most difficult job in the world. Roosevelt suddenly dies, and now he's got to finish up 2 wars. But in Potsdam, he knows a few things. So Potsdam is when he meets with Stalin. Potsdam, just outside of Berlin, right? The Japanese are trying to surrender, and Truman knows they're trying to surrender, and Stalin knows they're trying to surrender.
Were they really trying to surrender?
They were trying to surrender. Why were they trying to surrender? Again, so 1944 is when the United States starts to mopping up those islands, and one of the benefits of the terrible the terrible slaughter and the horrible battle in Iwo Jima is it gives these bombers, it gets all of our bombers much closer to Japan. So in February of 1945, and this is important, Curtis LeMay is told the B-29 isn't working. The B-29 is this brand new intercontinental bomber, and it can fly high in the sky. But they're kind of working out the kinks. The engines are going on fire. What Curtis LeMay says is he's just come from Europe, where the firebombing of cities has started. The United States didn't start doing that at the beginning of the war, but by the end of the war, we're using firebombing techniques on cities like Dresden. So Curtis LeMay says what we're going to do is we're going to strip the guns out of these planes. They're going to fly low. The Japanese air defenses had been virtually eliminated by the spring of 1945 because we've shot down most of their air force, not quite all of it. And Curtis LeMay, starting in March, he firebombs Tokyo. More people died in a shorter period of time in Tokyo in the first firebombing.
They were using B-29s or B-25s?
B-29s. So this is the new bomber. And 100,000 people died in Tokyo in a matter of hours in the first
with the
attack,
firebombing.
With the firebombing.
Good.
So the Atomic Bomb Targeting Committee back in Washington, Curtis LeMay starts taking out Japanese cities.
Yeah.
Curtis LeMay is going to raze to the ground. He's going to he is going to firebomb and immolate 70 Japanese cities. And he's told by the Atomic Bomb Targeting Committee, can you leave a few cities for us? because we might want to use this
Well, how many
weapon.
did they actually firebomb? Just
68.
They did 68. How many
68
people
cities.
killed
Millions. He killed millions of people.
in 1945?
In 1945, yes. So Truman knows this is the history that I believe is the way it played
You don't
out.
think, now, one question.
I'm almost there.
Go ahead. One question. You don't think there was a nationalism in Japan right up to the end? Until those horrific bombs went off where they says, hey, sayonara now, we don't play no more. No?
No, that's a very good question. So Potsdam is July. Stalin wants to get in the war. He has a non-aggression pact with the Japanese. He asks Truman in Potsdam. He says, at the end of this meeting, I told Roosevelt that as soon as we finished up with Hitler, I was going to get in on the war in the Pacific. And he's expecting Truman to allow him at the end of Potsdam and say, hey, Hirohito.
You can make the Japanese speak Russian. In other words, his eyes were on Japan.
Well, yeah, and that's important to him. The Japanese are on the eastern side of the Soviet Union, and they actually. Stalin would remember they lost a war with Japan in 1904, and so he wants in. He wants in. He wants a piece of Japan. He wants a piece of Asia. He wants a piece.
What
of
about China? Because that's a very important question.
Well,
I mean, what happened by the Japanese decimating China?
Yes.
Wasn't Russia interested in China at that time?
Well, China's a whole nother mess. What Stalin is just trying to do, right? So that Stalin has lost, he's lost 10 million men on the Eastern Front with the Germans. But what he does is he's sending 1 million troops. This is July. He's sending 1 million troops across Siberia to get into the war,
troops
to move down Mongolia, to start, to begin the process of opening another front. So,
and also could be to take over China, too. I mean,
well,
you're going to have 1 million troops there. You're in Mongolia. Next stop, China.
Right. Well, yes, China was a bit of a mess because it was in the midst of a civil war with Mao and Chiang Kai-shek. But ultimately the Chinese become allied with the Chinese communists become allied with Stalin. But that's another story. Yes,
we could interview people, and 1 million people are still in a concentration camp in China. You know that?
Yes, the Chinese still hate the Japanese. The Chinese will hate the Japanese for centuries because of the way the Japanese occupation. I'm not making any excuses for the Japanese. It's August 6th. We dropped the bomb.
First one.
Truman wants that bomb dropped because he doesn't want Stalin in the war.
So he figured he could end it faster by dropping the bomb, which it did.
August 6th.
And how many?
Hold on.
I didn't have any
Almost
more.
there.
I had no more uncles.
No.
They would have got whacked in Japan if we had to take there.
Hold on. August 6th, we dropped the bomb. August 7th, Stalin's in the war. August 8th, we dropped the bomb on Nagasaki. August 9th, August 10th, August 11th, August 12th. The Japanese haven't surrendered. August 13th, the Japanese haven't surrendered. In fact, we start firebombing more cities.
After the nuclear bombs.
If you're in Tokyo and your city has already been firebombed 100 times, if you go to Tokyo today and you're in one of those high-rise hotels and you look out over Tokyo, there's only one building that's left from before World War II because we erased all the rest. It's the Diet, the legislative building. So if you're in a bomb shelter in Tokyo and you heard that the Americans just eliminated Hiroshima, you don't know if it was firebombing or an atomic bomb or whatever, you lost another city, number 69. And then you lost Nagasaki, number 70. They've already been suing for peace. Now Stalin's in the war. And historians have come up with all of the documents now, what the Americans were actually saying, what Truman was thinking, what Stalin was thinking, and what Hirohito was thinking. So the war cabinet is divided. But what gives Hirohito the advantage in this divided war cabinet is now it's August 13th, August 14th, and the Soviets, 1.5 million Soviet troops, and they weren't too great as occupiers either. They're now bearing down on you. And
they were all barbarians. All of them were barbarians.
My point is that war was... The Soviets had as much to do with ending that war as the atomic bombs.
Really?
Yeah.
I question it. I question the fact that I didn't realize that many cities were firebombed. To be clear, be real clear.
Yeah.
But firebomb is one thing. when you have an atomic bomb that goes off, in a firebomb, it takes time for the fires to fry. When an atomic bomb comes, it's a whole nother thing. And certainly if I was the one that they dropped it on, I'd say, holy crap, we have to eat some more sushi. We have to make friends because we don't want any more of these new bombs that are so horrific. We don't want it to happen. And it wasn't just a firebomb and you still have skeletons of buildings sometimes. That nuclear bomb, if you remember looking at pictures, flattened everything out. It was just a mess. So in reality, that thing was enough to jar you to say, hey, Emperor Hirohito, we better just say, go to the USS Missouri and tell Mr. MacArthur we give up. No more. We don't want to play this anymore. I really believe that was certainly something that pushed it maybe for 6 months. It could have lasted 6 months more. That's what I'm saying.
Right. Historians who've studied what the Japanese, there's 10 to 15 guys in Japan who are making this decision, right? It's the emperor and 10 other guys. And they're in a bunker in Tokyo.
Yeah.
It's historians who've looked at what their documents, what they were thinking, the interviews with them have said that the Soviet entrance into the war, Stalin's entrance into the war, opening up an entire front with another 1 million troops was maybe as important, if not more important, than the atomic bombs. Also, keep in mind, yes, we were going to. There were plans for an invasion.
But I'm getting your wavelengths right now because in reality, America, whether you like us or not, we have compassion. And the whole idea was we weren't going to rape their woman and we weren't going to string them up and pull them apart because we're Americans and we have compassion and we're not that kind of people. Rather deal with America than the Russians or even the Chinese.
Yes, the Russians, when the Russians finally turned the tide of the war in Eastern Europe, they raped virtually every living woman between Poland and Berlin. So the Red Army as a marauding, pillaging, uncivilized, barbaric horde, absolutely true. And the Japanese knew that. And
well, I could see that.
And historians say that would you rather be occupied by the United States or would you rather be occupied by Stalin?
I get it. You see, I'm a person that listens. And then I can agree with you on it, but it did help a little bit to push their little bones. If they knew we were going to lob a couple more fat boys on them, that made the decision like quick. I'd rather go with the good old boys, the guys who are giving us lucky strikes and camels, the American GIs that don't rape our wives and kill our daughters and pull us apart. I'd rather be captured by America than China or Russia, right, Carlo?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So now
you make all due respect to your uncles, is that war, the war in the Pacific was won by the Marines, beach by beach, island by island. So that war was decided by that work done by thousands upon thousands of Marines in the most horrific battles, which would be almost indescribable for their violence. So that was won by them, and you're right. The other thing that happens, the last thing I will say, is he's a guy that's very interesting to me, is James Forrestal, the first Secretary of Defense. He says to Truman, so, you're talking about American decency. Truman had more fat boys. He could have dropped a couple of more bombs, but when he got the early reports on the death toll, knowing at this point this is indiscriminate, knowing you're not just killing soldiers, you're killing everybody. You're killing men, women, and children. Truman said no more.
Well, that's a whole other side.
He said no more.
When you had the test in the Pacific with the nuclear bomb there, and when you were testing is one thing, but actuality to see the dissemination and realize, wow, we didn't realize what we had. But once we lobbed the two of them, we realized that this is something that maybe we don't want to open up Pandora's box because that became the Cold War, became the influx of the development of the nuclear plans with Russia, with China. I mean, everybody's got nuclear bombs, but we know once you push that button, all bets are off because this could be destructive.
Yeah, so that's very important too. If we talk about the immediate post-war period, and how this whole policy of containment, mutually assured destruction, how that kind of fed into the paranoia and building up this military-industrial complex.
Well, I think it'd be with the Truman Doctrine.
Yeah.
As far as with the Soviet Union. So, okay, we finished off Japan, Missouri there, so sorry and all that. And they took their transistor radios. Oh, no, they didn't have them yet. And they went back home. Okay, let's go to the next level. Let's go into the 1950s, because we know in the 1950s we had a thing called Korea. I mean, did you touch upon that in the book?
What's interesting to me about, I didn't talk a lot about Korea, although
pretty important.
It is. Well, it is. It is. Here's what interested me about Korea. Mm-hmm. So between 1945 and you talk about your buddy Ronald Reagan, okay? Mm-hmm. The Cold War ends because of the rapport that Reagan establishes with Gorbachev. We can get to that.
You're fast forwarding now.
Yes, but let's go back to 1945. Yeah. Between 1945 and 1955, Stalin and Truman never meet. There is no meeting.
Truman was out by then. Eisenhower was coming in.
Right. Eisenhower was in by 53. But here's my point. Between 1945 and 1955, there's no meeting between the head of state, because Stalin is also dead by 53, and he's replaced and ultimately succeeded by Khrushchev. There's no meeting between the two heads of state of what become the two nuclear powers. What Reagan does and helps to bring the Cold War to an end relatively quickly is he has multiple meetings with Gorbachev, and he starts writing letters to Gorbachev. But going back to Korea, is Kim, the grandfather, wants to invade the South. And the United States had withdrawn its troops, had a very small force there at the time of the Korean War in 1950.
Now, what year we're talking about?
This is 1950.
1950.
Is Stalin didn't think in 1950 Truman gave a shit about what happened in Korea, because we had withdrawn our troops. We had 100,000 troops in Japan. What Stalin also thought was, if you're going to leave 100,000 troops in Japan, if that's going to belong to you, why don't I get the whole Korean Peninsula? So Stalin thought of that.
Which should have been none of our business.
But wouldn't it have been great if Stalin understood that if the North Koreans attacked, the United States was going to show up and fight that war, because he gave permission for Kim to do that, and
to take over the whole peninsula.
And it was.
Well, again,
I mean, that's a big what if.
Again, because a lot of people are listening, and a lot of people don't understand exactly, why is our nose in the Korean Peninsula the same as why was our nose I've lost a lot of my friends and relatives in Vietnam. The same crisis there. Look at why are we putting on nose? Why are we going to lose 55,000 Americans, hundreds of thousands maimed in Vietnam? Same as Korea. My opinion is we should have stayed the hell out of Korea, and we should have stayed the hell out of Vietnam. And you know what? They want to take them over. As long as you don't mess with us, go do whatever you want to do. I really don't care. So I'm not a real hawk. I'm a guy that says, look, we protect our own. I don't worry about the peninsula of Korea nor Vietnam.
That's the domino theory, which is what you're talking about with the Truman Doctrine. The Truman Doctrine is essentially the domino theory is there's a guerrilla war, there's a communist guerrilla war in Greece, and the thinking of Truman and others is if Greece goes, then Italy goes, and if Italy goes, then France goes, et cetera, et cetera.
They take the whole world.
And so with Vietnam, it's if Vietnam goes, then it's Cambodia and Laos, and then it's New Zealand and Australia.
Well, then that's something different.
But the domino theory was wrong. That wasn't how it was going to work.
And what is Vietnam today?
Well, they're a semi-repressive market economy.
Point in case.
Yes.
So we didn't have to lose 60,000. It would have became that anyway.
Correct. And Ho Chi Minh, he was a nationalist. Yeah. We talk about today nationalism and religious fanaticism, but Ho Chi Minh was a nationalist. He was interested in kicking out the French. That's it. So he did kick out the French in 1954. Yeah. And the French told us, Stay away.
Yeah, because you're not going to win this. Same as we're talking about Vietnam, and it's the similar circumstances that are going on. And again, we find ourselves in a jackpot right now in the Middle East. Again, with Iran, and we're going to go into that a little bit too. But I just want to keep everything on a chronological order.
Yeah.
So then Korea occurs.
Right.
We put our nose in there.
Yes.
And we lose another bunch of guys.
We do. We lose 50, 60,000 in Korea. Yes, horrible fighting, 3 years, and it ends in a stalemate.
Right. 38th parallel, is that the
Exactly. Yeah. So the North invades, and then we push them back, and then the Chinese get in the war.
Yeah.
Which is another story. But the war ends up in a stalemate, and millions of people die, including tens of thousands of American soldiers. Right.
Okay. So now we're up to 1954ish, like that.
Yep.
At that point, who's our president?
Now Dwight Eisenhower.
Dwight Eisenhower, a famous general who was a World War II hero, the supreme commander of all Allied troops.
Yep.
My man Dwight.
Yep.
And I remember him as a kid. And Dwight is right, and that's the way it was. Then all of a sudden, what happens with this guy John Foster Dulles?
So.
Because we're going into the Middle East. We're going into the Middle East
All right,
now.
I grew up in Queens. Okay.
Yeah.
So the Dulles brothers were part of the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant establishment, and so.
Well, explain who they are, please.
All right. So John Foster Dulles is Eisenhower's Secretary of State.
Okay.
And importantly, his brother Alan is the head of the CIA, and the two of these guys.
Wow, power, huh?
A lot of power, and I don't think these guys served Eisenhower very well. The two of these guys begin our habit of covert ops and regime change.
And putting our noses where we don't belong.
1953 Iran. So why are the Iranians still pissed off at us? Well, 1953, we depose a democratically elected leader, Mossadegh, and we put the Shah back on the throne.
The Shah ran the most corrupt son of a bitch in the world.
Correct.
Robbing everybody. Go ahead.
And we helped the Shah with the Savak, his secret police. So
killing people that are repressive to whatever they want to do, like what's going on right now.
Correct. So, but the Iranians are still not happy with us about that. And then
the Iranian people are Persians on the whole are very, very, they're like Italians.
Yes.
They're fine people.
Yes.
But now you've got this influx of these psychopathic Muslim fanatic assholes, and that's what destroys the good people of the Persian company of a country of Iran, right?
Late 1970s, Jimmy Carter wants to cause trouble in the Soviet Union, and this is something you referenced, Carlo. Zbigniew Brzezinski and Carter the CIA sticks its nose into all of the stans, all of those Islamic republics which are part of
Kazakhstan,
Kyrgyzstan, Hapistan,
Uzbekistan,
right, Afghanistan, right. So
stand by me. Go ahead.
But this is the Muslim underbelly of the Soviet Union.
Yeah, hold on, we're missing one thing. You jumped to 57.
I'm sorry.
You got to bring Carlo up because he wasn't there and you weren't born yet. We had a little bit of an influxitation with this thing called the Suez Canal.
Suez Canal, yeah.
Well, I mean, it was an important fact. And at the same time, my buddies from the stand-up hip away were taking out my Indian buddies. So, I mean, these are all things happening at that time, right?
Yes, and here is where, like, for me, because I wasn't alive.
You think that I'm just a dumb face, right?
I do not. I'm engaging.
And am I impressing you with my knowledge?
No, I will. You know more about the Suez Canal mess than I do, which Again, I was writing a book on the entire Cold War, and I will admit there's some things.
You missed a couple of them there because that was a very important factor.
Yeah, but it's 40 years.
Okay.
Wasn't that the British and the French?
Okay, let's go off the Suez being you're not an expert on that.
I am not. No,
okay,
absolutely not.
So let's go to where you are. So now we help the Shah of Iran take control.
1953.
53.
And why do we do that?
Mm-hmm.
Why does John Foster Dulles?
That shit that you put in the car.
So
did they own any oil companies? These two Fugazi brothers?
Yeah. So they're part of Sullivan and Cromwell.
Oh, that's a law firm.
Correct. So they are. John Foster Dulles was running Sullivan and Cromwell. So Sullivan and Cromwell is this very interesting
fine law firm.
Yes, but why you hire Sullivan and Cromwell is because you're Chase Manhattan or you're one of several large petroleum companies like Mobil, and you hire Sullivan and Cromwell to help you mess around in the world to make sure that your foreign ownership position isn't damaged. So that's what Sullivan and Cromwell is, sort of a law version of the CIA. That's what Sullivan and Cromwell
I put it in a different way. It's like the Gambino family.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yes. So the British,
not the Genovese family.
The whole
Gambino.
Iran thing is the British own The British own the oil. The British have none of their own oil. So Iran is their gas station. Mm-hmm. So Mossadegh in early 1950s, he says, no, it's our oil. You don't get to own all of our oil. The British are upset with this. And after we go in, what John Foster Dulles and Alan Dulles, who know how to do these things as lawyers for Sullivan and Cromwell, but now they're in government, all of a sudden, half of the Iranian oil is owned by the five major American petroleum companies, five major oil companies. So why did we go into Iran?
Oil.
What about Guatemala? That's in the United Fruit Company. That's
United Fruit, the people that made all the bananas. So Dwight is right. 1953. Oh, that's great. That Iran thing that happened. It's plausible deniability. When John Foster Dulles and Alan Dulles, who have stock, who are on the board of directors of United Fruit, the banana king of Central America, and the Guatemalan president is trying to rearrange the contract that Sullivan Cromwell has written, giving United Fruit effective ownership all of Guatemala. When that democratically elected leader starts to push back, what do?
We invade.
We invade. We do another CIA covert op, and we get rid of
Same as Nicaragua with the Sandinese.
Yes, Jacobo Arbenz. So we get rid of him too.
Yeah.
But who's there? Who's there in 1954, finishing up a motorcycle trip in Guatemala City? Che Guevara. Che Guevara is watching U.S. CIA planes bomb civilian outposts. We're getting close
to Cuba. Well, not yet, but come on.
But Che is radicalized, seeing the United States.
The American people that are taking over our land, the imperialist America, take our bananas. This is our bananas. This is the beginning of Che Guevara and another psychopath.
Fidel Castro.
Yes. Okay, so let's hold on. Now, because we're doing it chronological. So now, 1955. Important year? When does Eisenhower go to?
When does Eisenhower do what?
When is he finished being the president?
Oh, not till 1960. 1960,
right? That was Kennedy came in.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get that portion now. Now the late 50s, we developed the two sides of Berlin that we were just talking about.
Right, Berlin
and
split.
We have East Germany and West Germany.
Right.
We have our communist East Germany and West Germany. And they actually divide this beautiful city of Berlin in half. Right. So, I mean, that's going on right now because we can't lose our focus on that because the European thing is going. Also, during that time, my friends from, not Turkey, my friends from... what is Margot? They're Hungarian.
Yeah. So there's the
Hungarian, the Eastern Bloc. The Russia now is sniffing their nose into Hungary, Czechoslovakia, all these Eastern Bloc countries, and they're putting their friggin' nose. So weren't we worrying about that during the Cold War?
Right. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what we thought the Soviet Union was and what you thought the Soviet Union was in the 50s and why you're so scared. Is what... The Soviet Union you want to talk about gangsters. It's a gangster operation run out of the Kremlin by the nomenclatura, the guys that are all being
similar
treated nice.
To our Obama administration.
Yeah, not too different from not too different what Putin's running. It's a kleptocracy, right? But keep in mind what the Kremlin was trying to do, and they were having a really hard time doing it. Is the Kremlin is trying to manage a country the size of Asia with 100 different nationalities and ethnic groups, and it was always in a state of rebellion. So the Warsaw Pact countries that you're talking about, the only countries that were ever invaded by the Warsaw Pact countries were their own countries. The only countries they ever invaded were their own countries. So in 1953, the East Germans try to revolt, and they don't succeed. In 1956, the Hungarians revolt and the tanks
and
show
those
up.
scumbags. And I was in Budapest.
Yes.
A lot of people don't know the Hungarians were more brutal on the Hungarians than even the Russians. And they used to have torture chambers when they thought someone was an informant. And I went into these torture chambers, most horrific shit you ever saw. And people don't realize that. They were doing this to their own people, these son of a bitches.
In 1968 in Czechoslovakia, the tanks roll again. So perpetually, the Soviet Union is trying to hold together a whole bunch of people who don't want to have anything to do with them. My point is, they had enough trouble trying to keep their shit together, and didn't have a lot of time to think about what was going on in Western Europe and elsewhere.
A lot of the people, like in Hungary, Czechoslovakia, were making deals with the Soviet Union at that time,
Sure,
Russia.
yes.
And they were running over there, giving up things when people wanted to be nationalists and wanted to get rid of Russia out of Czechoslovakia and Hungary. They were ratting them out, and then they would get them, and they would beat it out of them and all that. And they had this underground. Am I correct? What I'm saying?
Yes. Well. Yeah, there is, and there is perpetually an underground. But what the police state was able to do, at least temporarily, was effectively able to maintain control with total surveillance, like the East Germans. And this is what Castro does. The East Germans had something called the block surveillance system. So what would happen is, you don't know if your husband or your wife or your uncle or the kid down the street is going to rat you out. So if you're in East Germany, you never talk on the phone, and you're not even
trust nobody.
It's not, right. So they were able to create that sort of repression, which was successful, but was it always going to be successful? And how long was that going to last? But because those societies were innately repressive, there was always a constant revolt going on. And what's also happening is, this gets into Berlin, is millions of people are fleeing Eastern Europe, and they're fleeing East Germany. The reason why the Berlin Wall is put up in 1961...
Because they were running across.
Well, they had lost all their doctors. They had lost their engineers. They were all running... They put the wall up because they had lost 3 million people.
Wasn't there a famous statement by someone, they were talking about, well, if you don't like it, why don't you build a wall? Some politician said that, American politician at that time.
Well, we're talking about Kennedy going to Berlin and saying, ich bin ein Berliner. Are we talking about that moment at the wall?
Well, what does that mean in English? Ich bin
I am a Berliner. I am you. We are with you. We're all with you. Yeah, Kennedy goes and makes that. That's arguably the most famous speech of the Cold War.
I want to just, like I said, we have time frames and all that. So I want to just focus on things in your book, very important. Now we're talking about, we're rustling into 1957, where I was hiding under my desk in my school. We'd have the air raid. We were scared shit that we were going to get bombed, and we had the black and white TV on there. And at that same time, we had the mob was flourishing. We had an FBI director that dressed up in women's panties, my friend J. Edgar Hoover, right? And what was, what in your book you talk about J. Edgar? How powerful was he really? Because I know from my own education, I know he had dossiers and everything, even on the great Martin Luther King to put a little water on the fire. He wasn't the most reputable husband in the world either, and Hoover had all this information on him and many others, including President Kennedy. Am I correct?
You are correct. So what the FBI is doing, and George Orwell writes the book 1984 about surveillance.
Yeah, but that's what I want to get.
But J. Edgar Hoover, when you work for the FBI, they taught you how to break and enter. I mean, they had schools for this, for placing bugs. There were hotels in the United States which the FBI would say, when they would pre-bug rooms. They'd have rooms already bugged in many of the nicest hotels, and they would work with hotels. So if somebody showed up, they got sent to the room. And
Hoover, these would be these would be illegally wiretaps. What were the grounds of them getting the wiretap?
Yes,
he didn't need to go to a judge. He just did it. Right.
No, it's all
not like our corrupt FBI agents that went and got a FISA warrant that had no credibility to it, where they could tap Carter Page, who we've had on the show here. And that was a total, that's supposed to have some control over it. And we saw, whether you like Trump or not, I mean, it's coming out now that they didn't have the evidence to get the damn warrant. And in reality, I was a detective. You go before a judge, you lie to a judge, you're committing a felony.
The FBI under Hoover
did nothing about judges.
Well, either they owned all the judges, but J. Edgar Hoover didn't worry about. I mean, he got caught every once in a while, but he didn't care. Every once in a while, there was a famous spy, Judith Copeland. Ultimately, the case got thrown out at appeal because of illegal wiretaps. But whatever. What was important to Hoover? What was most important to Hoover? So why is he in power? Right? He's in power from like the mid 1920s until he dies 72, 73 in Nixon's at the end of Nixon's first term or second term. So he's
That's
in
a
power.
long time.
He's in power.
Carlo.
And so how do you stay in power?
Have dirt on everybody.
No, this is really how you stay in power. So you're Harry Truman, and Harry Truman didn't like J. Edgar Hoover, but it's 1948, and you're in a tough election, and something comes into the Oval Office, and it's a dossier on Tom Dewey. And the dossier says maybe Tom Dewey's marriage isn't so good. And then it's 1952 or it's 1956 or it's 1960.
He was feeding his enemies with information that made them successful.
No, he was feeding presidents opposition research to keep him in power.
Gotcha.
And it's time for re-election. Well, hey, there's an FBI delivery, and look at this. This is exactly what you want to know about your opponent. So what Hoover was
remarkable guy, Hoover.
Yes.
My friend Leonardo DiCaprio played him in the movie. Yeah. Did you see that movie?
He did. He did a really good. Was that a Scorsese film too?
No.
Maybe that was Clint Eastwood. Yeah, that's right. But a remarkable guy, but a strange guy who had, after his mom died, had one intimate relationship in his life, Clyde Tolson, who he shared every meal with.
He was homosexual. Or was he like my friend Ed Koch, God rest his soul? I think he was asexual. I don't think
maybe. No,
yeah.
I mean,
some of them are asexual.
No,
you
right.
know, and they have a friend like and their best friend, and it would people would make assumptions. I mean, was there any real clear fact that he was taking it up the caboodle?
No. There isn't.
So you're saying J. Edgar Hoover? We have no clear evidence that he took it up the caboodle by the other guy.
What I think is interesting about J. Edgar Hoover is he is ostensibly this guy, the Boy Scouts and conservative, anti-communism. He's a straight white Christian America. This thing that he's
it right, get it done.
But no, that's kind of the propaganda.
Yeah.
But the truth about his life is that he has an unconventional relationship. He doesn't have a family. He doesn't have kids. He doesn't have a wife. Is the person he's most devoted to is another man for most of his life. There's nothing wrong. Again, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that was the truth.
So what are you saying? Are you
That's
saying he was
truth.
gay or not?
No, I'm just
Come
saying,
on. You're fumbling a little bit.
No, it's like
I don't care about political correctness. Either he was or he wasn't.
No, it's
doesn't
like
make me.
No, it's like Roy Cohn. It's
well, I knew Roy Cohn too.
Yeah,
I
but
know everybody.
But it's the
I didn't know Hoover. That was one I didn't know.
I think why do people become awful, terrible, crazy things?
But even women. They become BBFs, best friends, and all that. And they become, they get into the lesbianics. Nothing wrong with that.
No.
Nothing wrong with that. And I can see it. When you're with somebody so long and you have a relationship, professional, things can happen. So what I'm trying to say, even if he did have a homosexual relationship with this guy, I really don't care. I don't care.
No one cares.
Okay.
No one cares. But the point is,
you were like a little slow on the draw on that. I mean, like you didn't want to come out. He's dead, all right? You don't have to worry about this.
I don't know if he's gay or not.
Well, maybe he was trisexual. Maybe he tried every
he could have been. What I can say is the love of his life was a man. What I can say.
Well, the love of my life was my brother who died.
Okay.
He was the love of my life. I didn't have sex with my brother, but he was the love of my life.
Well, Clyde Tolson wasn't Hoover's brother.
Well, maybe he didn't have sex with Clyde Tolson. Maybe it was his best BBF.
But if J. Edgar Hoover was having meals every day with his brother, people wouldn't also assume that he was having an intimate relationship, because that would be incestuous.
Okay, so we'll get off that, Carlo, because we have not really got to the bottom. With Brian's deep digging, he still doesn't have pictures. So there's no facts to. And if he was, Carlo, who cares? Who cares? I thought he was. I think he was a great patriotic American.
He's a horrible American.
He
stole.
He stole?
He stole. He stole. He had FBI guys wrote his book, and he took the money. Masters of Deceit was his book, but so the FBI guys write it. The book is a huge bestseller. He was and he kept all the money. He created a charity.
You want to write a book for me, and I'll put my name on it? I don't care. I'll steal it.
I'd be happy to read your book. Your book would be unbelievable.
My books. I've been involved with 3 books, but okay, let's keep focused, because we're good. I like to say J. Edgar Hoover, because a lot of people never realized, what, where, and I'm glad we clarified that. Okay, so now let's go back to 1960. 1960, 61. Now you got Che Guevara came out of the friggin' jungles. He met with the other jerk off,
Fidel Castro.
And
who
now
wasn't a communist at first. He was another nationalist that just wanted.
That became communist, and that's what Bill De Blasio and his wife went down with the Sandinistas to Nicaragua. He went to Havana. He wants to be down. I told him I'd give him 2 first-class tickets. Get the frig out of the city. But let's stay focused. Okay, now I remember this distinctly. You were only 3 years old. You don't remember. This was scary. We had black and white TV, and I'll never forget the missiles they were showing. They were Nike,
No, they were.
What was the name of those missiles?
The Nike missiles.
Nike missiles. I'm thinking about
missiles.
sneakers. That's why they named them Nike, because they were missiles. Yeah. So now they have the Russian ships. Now we have our U-2 pilots, and they're taking pictures. They've seen these tubular things that are rockets, and they're bringing them in with freighters. Now all of a sudden, Kennedy has to make a move, and Kennedy blockades Cuba. Come on.
So,
do you talk about this in the book?
Oh yeah. So what people don't understand, and when I'm 3, and you're a little older, but you're how you could remember the fear and that 13-day period, as they call it. The thing is, what both sides didn't know was all the stuff that was going on, which is why once nuclear weapons become part of your arsenal, and why it becomes a billion times worse and scarier. So during the Cuban Missile Crisis, what we did not know is the Soviets, in addition to those missiles that the U-2 was finding with those pictures, is they had 100 tactical nuclear weapons, which they were going to use if there was a U.S. invasion. 100 tactical nuclear weapons.
Wow.
Small, bazooka kind of stuff.
And also on trucks that were mobile, where if you had to hit them, they're mobile. Go ahead.
Yes. So we thought they had we caught them before they put in their long-range missiles. But before the United States had caught them, they had put 20 to 30 of those longer range. They were intermediate range missiles that could hit Dallas, could hit New York. But in addition, there were 100 tactical nuclear warheads. We were also experimenting, and the Soviets were doing this too. Is we were sending nuclear weapons into space and blowing them up for something called the Christophilus effect. Because
never heard of this. Now this is interesting. I saw it in the excerpt of your book.
Yeah.
So let's go into that.
So during the Cuban Missile Crisis, we're sending these nuclear warheads up, and the idea of the Christophilus effect is that the thought was it would send out a pulse. So it would, for a brief period of time, it would create kind of this electromagnetic shield that could repel any incoming missiles. It later became sort of the Star Wars idea. But so we're sending, and the Soviets were doing this too. These were just experiments, sending nuclear warheads into space. Curtis LeMay is also, he's sending now they're B-52s, he's sending them past their turnaround points because he really wants an invasion. He's sending them past the turnaround points
during the crisis.
During the crisis, he's doing this, and he's also launched at least one and maybe more practice missile tests off the Pacific, and then finally you have this guy, this submarine, in the middle of all this. No, this is a Soviet submarine. So 4 of the Soviet submarines that were in the area, each of them had a missile with a nuclear warhead on board, and so at the height of this crisis, the blockade has happened. The submarines have lost contact with Moscow.
How many Soviet submarines?
There were 4 of them. but one of them is ready to send a nuclear missile at a U.S. aircraft carrier and its surrounding ships.
The task force. Good.
Yes. And because the submarine has been underwater too long, they can't surface, everybody's hot.
No
It's
communication.
a mess, no communication. The captain sees the U.S. aircraft carrier. He says, we are, arm the warhead, arm the missile. But because he doesn't have direct contact with Moscow, he has to get the permission. Yes, 3 people have to consent. So it's the captain says yes. There's another officer who says yes. And this guy, Vasily Arkhipov, says no. Don't.
He was
do it.
on the submarine.
He was on the submarine.
So he stopped that nuclear
He stopped
missile.
that nuclear warhead from possibly destroying half the U.S. fleet, which would have probably instigated World War III.
Wow, we came that close.
Yes.
2 guys were for.
One guy.
No, 2 guys were for, and 1 guy was against. And he
Yes,
stopped
2 to
that.
1, right.
And what was his name again?
Vasily Arkhipov.
Wow,
Saved
that's
the world.
chilling, huh, Carlo?
That's really,
People
really
never.
close.
That's really insightful shit. That's really insightful stuff. Now all of a sudden,
How many times do you think during the Cold War were there people like, and there are other examples,
on the edge like that.
people in the middle management, so to speak, making those kinds of decisions?
Wow.
How many times did that happen? That wasn't the only time.
Imagine if you have a mentally defuncation guy in there.
Right.
Holy shit,
Yeah.
What was this thing with the CIA MK Ultra program? What was that all about?
So we thought that the Russians had figured out mind control.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So, although
This is before LSD.
no, this is LSD has been developed in a Swiss lab in the 1940s.
Oh.
And
Did you
so-
ever take LSD, Carlo?
No comment.
Okay, that means he did. Go ahead.
So I've taken LSD.
Well, I have never. Oh, excuse me, Sunshine.
Is that similar?
Sunshine, 1969, Rockaway Playland. And my ex-wife gave me a thing that looked like a saccharin tablet. So she said, just take a little bite of it, right? So I took a little bite. I said, yeah, you got beat. I popped the whole thing. I was seeing ghosts flying around and
There
shit.
you go. Right.
So I guess I took LSD
Yeah,
too.
yeah. So
okay. I'm honest about the fucking.
this is
I got
important.
home. I saw things floating around my room and shit, and I was like flipped out. But go ahead.
So the CIA spends most of the 50s giving LSD to thinking that LSD could be the secret to mind control. So in
Hold
other
on
words-
a second.
What?
My ex-wife gave me LSD. That's maybe why we didn't last. Go ahead, keep going.
But hold that thought about the hallucinations. So the CIA thinks that they can use LSD for interrogations. So you give somebody LSD, they tell you everything,
Yeah.
and they probably even what the hope is that they're going to give LSD to Soviet spies
And they'll tell you
enemies,
everything, yeah.
and they'll tell you everything, and then they won't remember any of it. So that's the idea of LSD. So the CIA experiments with LSD throughout the 50s, veterans hospitals, mental clinics, homeless people. At one point, jails.
So- and Harvard
so they're
University.
they're giving people LSD for 70 days. Universities across America, they're
2 of the notable subjects, Ted Kaczynski and Whitey Bulger.
They actually were inflicting them with LSD.
Yep.
Holy shit. Well, Whitey Bulger was pretty sharp. He lasted quite a while.
I didn't know about Whitey Bulger getting LSD.
Yep, in Atlanta federal prison. They gave it to him to get time off his sentence.
Oh, in jail, he was
They
like a
said,
test
"Well,
bunny.
if you do this, we'll give you time off your sentence."
Wow.
Right. So Allen Ginsberg who becomes the sort of an LSD guru. The first time he gets LSD is through a CIA-run university program. Anyway, the point is,
You saw Marty Scorsese's movie. Did you see that one with Ginsberg in there? Or what was that about Bob Dylan? He made the Bob
one?
Dylan.
the Bob
that
Dylan.
was it. It was based.
the one Scorsese I didn't see.
But listen to me.
Rolling Thunder Review.
But let me tell you what
It's
he
on
did.
Netflix.
He made it all up. He made it all up. He had characters that were made up. This is Scorsese at his best. He actually had characters that were made up in there that never happened. But when Scorsese does something, he's such a friggin' artist. It all works. But go ahead.
God. You were great. By the way, you were great in The Irishman.
Well, thank you.
It's a terrific movie.
All right,
and
we got-
you're so good.
we got some
You're so
time
good.
now.
But the thing about LSD, so they do it for 10 years. What does it do? What does LSD does it
Fucks you up.
Right, exactly.
It fucks you up. Okay, so let's get now, because of our time element here, let's get to the end of the Cold War.
Yes.
So we all know what was going on during the Cold War there. Poor Kennedy gets whacked, and then all of it. Do you think that J. Edgar Hoover knew about Kennedy getting whacked, or that he knew what happened? Do you really feel?
No.
Where do you think it came from?
You know what I think is interesting about the Kennedy assassination is the FBI knew about Oswald, the CIA knew about Oswald.
They never put the things together. The same as these terrorists in New York City. They knew about the flight train. They never put that together. Okay,
J. Edgar Hoover was embarrassed. He was embarrassed because
he didn't know. Yeah.
Well, they didn't tell the Secret Service.
Wow.
Kennedy's driving around in a car without a top. The CIA knew. The FBI knew about Oswald. Oswald was.
Yeah, but they never figured this guy would be capable of doing something like that. You know, we did look at The Irishman. I'm surprised Frank Sheehan didn't say he whacked Kennedy too well. He said he whacked everybody. Yeah. Okay, so now the guy, when you say Bo, and I've met every president except for Obama, and in my lifetime, the guy who you would love to meet, you know who that is?
Ronald Reagan.
No, I did meet him. I sat with him in the Oval. Google me, Bo Dietl, Ronald Reagan. I sit with him in the Oval Office. You can watch me in action.
But you're asking me the guy that I want to meet.
No, me.
Yes.
Bo Dietl, who do you want to meet?
Oh.
Comes into play in your book.
Gorbachev.
He's dead. Come on.
Gorbachev's still alive.
No.
Who do you want to meet?
Putin.
Oh, you want to meet Putin? Oh,
yeah.
Of course.
I like Putin. You know why? Why I like Putin? This was a guy, and a lot of people don't know, he was involved with Berlin there. He was a colonel or some shit.
East Germany.
Well, he was a
KGB officer.
KGB.
Yeah.
But you know what he did? And I got to give the guy, and if he was sitting with me, we'd have vodkas, we'd drink. He brought back Russia when it was in the abyss, financially, economically. He brought a nationalism back there to Russia that he has to be commended. Whether you like him or you like Russia or not, he brought nationalism back to Russia with the help of a lot of his oligarchs there. They had to pay the piper. Putin's probably worth $250 billion because they all have to come when what do they do with organized crime, Carlo?
You got to give him an envelope.
Tribute. Yeah. So all those oligarchs have to give tribute to.
He's called Mr. 10%.
Well,
he's Mr. 10%.
You got to give him a credit. I mean, look at out of all the people in the world that you say, Bo, who would you want to meet? Vladimir Putin, I want to meet. And I told my Russian friends, I'll take a trip to Moscow. I've never been there. I want to meet this dude, and I want to say him right out as we drink vodka together. He's the man. When I wrote a book, One Tough Cop, it was sent over to Russia. And a lot of they ran it on the Russian TV, the video and all that. Mike the Russian had some connections over there. And that's one of the people, out of anybody, I know Buffett, I know all these guys. Radarhead was up in Rayos with me, Bill Gates. I never met the other schmuck from Amazon. He doesn't impress me. Putin I'd like to meet before anybody. Is that strange?
You're a law and order guy. He doesn't believe in the rule of law. You care about the law.
I care about the law, but I also...
He's a crook. He's a
crook, and so are a lot of these CEOs running these friggin' businesses.
You're just
they're all crooks, including all these banks that were bailed out. That they should have had the same thing. If I have problems in business, there ain't nobody bailing Bo Dietl out. You know what? And all of a sudden we bailed them out. They're crooks.
They are crooks.
They don't use a gun. They don't use a mask.
They are crooks.
Come on, let's be real about it.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the nationalism and strength of Russia now because of Putin bringing them back. When the other guy, Spothead, was there, Gorbachev, what's his name? Spothead, the guy with the spot on him?
Gorbachev.
The country was going into trouble. This guy did bring them back. No? Got to give credit to credit. Even with organized crime, you got to give credit to credit. Guys who brought organized crime families up during the 50s and all that, they got to give them credit. They did some good things. They whacked a few people, but they had a nice organization, a lot of funding and money. So there's crime, and then there's crime. You know what I mean? Okay. Come on, let's be real. I'm 69 years old. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. But the reality is, what's the difference in criminality from some of these CEOs that are stealing and robbing against the guy with a gun that goes into a bank and runs? What's the difference? You tell me.
Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin thinks that the greatest geopolitical tragedy of the 20th century was the end of the Soviet Union. Yeah, so he's big on trying to build up the Bolshevik imperium. But what does that mean? So you talked about...
You think he would give up all his money for that?
No, hold on.
No.
You
He's a capitalist. He loves cash. He loves broads. He likes vodka. He enjoys life. That's number one in his life.
You tell that to the people in Ukraine. There's a hot war going on in Ukraine, and that's Vladimir Putin would love to collect Ukraine. He would love to collect Belarus.
If Vladimir Putin wanted to go and take Ukraine, especially under Obama, you think that he wouldn't do it? I don't believe so. I think people, as you get older, even me, I used to like to punch out guys. I don't do that anymore. Kinder and gentler as you get older. And Putin's about my age. You get kind of softer and milder and mellower. You don't think Putin is kind of mellowing out?
Maybe.
As you get older, you mellow out.
I think for the average guy in Russia, I think a system. I think it's a version. I think what he's established is what the old Soviet Union was. It's the complete and total klepto. Is he making the world a better place? What are the Russians doing for us? What have the Russians ever done?
Do you fear Russia over China? I fear China more than Russia. I fear China 100% over everything, because if you understand the psychology of their master plan is to take over the world. Well, and I mean, that I know. I've been to Beijing.
I've been to Beijing, too.
Worst food in the world, smog,
you didn't
traffic.
Go to the right places. Smog is horrible.
Sucked.
So we got to stop being afraid of everybody. That's the whole thing about the book, about being afraid. First of all, we all need to pitch in together. And this is what Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping and these guys and our current guy in the White House isn't doing. There's a thing for Carlo. There's a thing for Carlo and his generation and my children's generation, and it's called climate change. And Australia is on fire. And you talk about Beijing. They've got their own problems. And one of the problems, smog. It's poison. And India is people who haven't traveled.
And everyone's worried about the climate change. No one's dealing with them.
That's coal plants and all kinds of, and cars and stuff that they're not handling. Xi Jinping has got everything he can do, right? You don't think he's a little bit scared about what's going on in Hong Kong? You know, he's looking over his shoulder. Is trying to keep 1.4 billion people from not.
Well, he puts them in concentration camps.
That's what he's doing.
Do you know how many Chinese were killed by the Chinese in the last 50 years? I think something like 40 million Chinese were killed by Chinese over the last 40 years.
This was the best thing the Americans did during the Cold War. This is the best thing the Americans can do now.
What?
Is try to observe rule of law. The principle. Sure, we fail. But we believe in rule of law. You believe in rule of law.
Yes.
We believe in fairness. We believe that when people shouldn't go into government and end up coming out with billions of dollars.
Which they do.
But not all of them do. But not all of them do. There's plenty of public servants, and you know public servants.
That's one of the reasons why
who did not get rich doing it.
This is one of the reasons why, with all the narcissism and lying aspects of my president, Donald Trump, who I know 45 years, who I call a lying narcissist. But one part about him, and I gave him $50,000. I like what he's doing. He's trying to get things done. And let's be real about it. The evidence that's at hand now, if you're going to try to impeach somebody, give me bribery. Give me some shit now. I mean, like even with the mayor of New York City, they locked these two Jewish guys up from Brooklyn for bribing somebody. It was de Blasio. To have a bribery charge, you have to have the briber and the bribee. And de Blasio was the guy being bribed. And yet they got locked up and de Blasio didn't get locked up. So this is the rule of law when you talk about rule of law. But my point with President Trump, he's the kind of guy, I know him 45 years. He's the guy that could sit with Putin and say, hey, Vladimir, he don't drink, first of all. Trump does not drink, never drank. Even though he has his own vodka, he should bring a bottle of his Trump vodka over there and say, look, you got your great country, we have our great. You have nationalism, you respect your country, I respect mine. We have to learn how to live together, because I could wipe you out, you could wipe me out, we wipe the world out. That's not winning. But in reality, I don't want to hurt what you're doing, but you cannot excess yourself and go and start eating up. I can't stand back and let you do it. So I'm going to let you know right now. You go after these countries, we're stepping up. But let's not. Let's try to live in harmony some way. I want to see harmony. I have a grandson. I want to see him see the end of the world. I don't want to see the end of the world in his lifetime, and that's what it would be if we go to war with Russia and or China.
And that's what Gorbachev and Reagan, they began, the end of the Cold War began. Gorbachev and Reagan said, we need to abolish nuclear weapons. They can never be used. That's how that was the rapport when they get together.
Who could you trust?
Well, but
you're going to trust China to get rid of them, or Russia?
No, but what they succeeded in doing is they succeeded for the first time in removing entire classes of weapons, and that was their goal. And they were making progress.
Yeah.
Yes. So Putin's got 5,000 nuclear warheads. We have 5,000 nuclear warheads. Why?
Well, on that note, I want to ask you what's your next project you got? And I do tell the listening audience to get your book. Someone is out to get us. Brief history of the Cold War, paranoia and madness. Now, if you listen to our discussion today, there'll be evidence in the book and facts and actuality that I learned facts today, Carlo. I learned some stuff today talking to Brian, and I think you will when you pick the book up. It's very interesting because it's all about what our future is going to be. You always look at history to know what the future is going to be, and you must learn from history for the future.
I think my next project is there was a phrase that was popularized in the 19th century by an abolitionist minister about he spoke and he said he was an anti-slavery minister, and he said, I'm not sure about what's ahead, but I believe that the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice. It may not happen right away, and I think for our children, I think we have, you and I, Bo, in our generation, our Cold War, even though you saw more of it than I did, is we have a responsibility in imagining a moral universe without nuclear weapons and in which we really are doing something about climate change.
And again, as a grandfather, I'd love to agree with you, but I mean, just what's happened in New York State with this idiot mayor and this idiot governor with this criminal reform bill. Woman was beat up and robbed with a guy with a stick, and he robbed it. He had history of several robberies. He was released, no bail. Now, the bail reform, I'm for. There's no reason why a nonviolent crime, someone should stay in jail for $1,000 bail. That's bullshit. That's originally what it's all about. Now, you have violent crimes, no bail. The judge actually says, under the new Criminal Reform Act, I got to release you. Where are we going with that? Where are we going with the people going to work every day on the subway, walking around New York City, when you know someone who just got locked up on an armed robbery is out and you can't hold them? We're going in the wrong direction there. We're really going in the wrong direction. What jails are for are people that are affecting other people's lives. And people out there should have the right to be safe. And right now we're going in the wrong direction. That could be the abyss of what's going to occur. Then other people are going to say, well, if the police, they actually talk about liberals, talking about dismantling the police department. We don't need police. Really? Then what do? We just have the warriors handling New York City and this country, then we'll have the psychopath right-wingers with machine guns, and we're just going to have a mass hysteria. So it comes down to what you just said was very true. Law and order. It does come down to law and order. And law and order can mean a few things. It can mean corruption, or it could be something else. It could be violence, corruption. It's all law and order. No?
We ask our police to do far too much. We ask them to be social workers. We ask them to do 100 things. They take care of a crazy amount. God bless. God bless.
And when they do something wrong, they're ready to hang them, but yet they have to make those split-session decisions. Well, Brian, you're a very, very interesting guy, and we look forward to your next book. And people, if you want to try to get his book, Brian, where do you get it?
SomeoneIsOutToGetUs.com. That's all you need to do.
SomeoneIsOutToGetUs.com. You can order his book. Very interesting. And you know what? On the weekend, you pick that book up, you'll learn a lot because it all touches upon us. Even though you might have not been alive during the Cold War, certainly it will tell you the history, the true history of what went on. And I learned a lot today, Brian. I thank you.
Thank you, Bo.
Carlo?
All right. Brian, thank you very much. Very, very good discussion we had today. You can follow us on social media. We're at One Tough Podcast on Twitter. Bo's at Bo Dietl on Twitter and at The Real Bo Dietl on Instagram. You can email us any questions, comments, guest suggestions to onetoughpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us at wabcradio.com.
We got one more thing we almost forgot, Carla. We do Punk of the Week. Punk of the Week is a thing, person, or something that's really pissing you off this week. So I ask my guests all the time, what is the thing that's bothering you, or a person? What is bothering you the most this week? Anything.
I don't like this guy, Mike Pompeo.
Mike Pompeo.
Yeah, I don't like this guy, Mike Pompeo, our Secretary of State, because I think he's a Carlo. Obviously, I'm a liberal. I'm not happy with Mike Pompeo. I think we've made things.
You are happier with John Kerry better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, but my punks. All
right, so I respect that. What about you, Carlo?
I would have to say our governor. He deflected any questions about the Bail Reform Act in his State of the State address. He didn't even talk about it. It's his baby. This is what's going to happen to New York under this new law, and he's not addressing it or talking about it at all. I think that's a punk move.
Well, that would be my punk of the week, but I don't want to duplicate what you feel. I'm going to have a reversal today. I listened to the interview of Hillary Clinton by Howard Stern the other day, and I'm telling you something. I called up, what's my friend's name there, Lenny Davis, and I says, invite her up to Rayo's. I want to take her out to dinner. I'm being serious now. I've reversed my comments on Hillary. If you listen to this interview by Howard Stern, she becomes so humanized, and all the negatives I have against her were diminished. I call up Lanny Davis. I said, Lanny, let's get her up there and have that. Honestly, if she did this interview and went public, she would have been elected president of the United States. She's a very intelligent, caring, compassionate woman, strong, and I tell you what, these countries that are messing with us, they wouldn't mess with us either if Hillary Clinton was in there. Now all my Republican, all my right-wing friends are going to say Bo's turned around. I just tell people, listen to the Howard Stern interview. I just got such chills listening to her and saying, wow. And I've called her a lot of names publicly, but I tell you what, Hillary Clinton is a very smart lady, and she would have made a great president. She would have been a tough president, too. She wouldn't have been no Obama, and she was tough. When the time came to take bin Laden out, she was 100% of doing it. And my apologies to Hillary Clinton. Now, you never thought you were going to hear Bo Dietl apologize to Hillary Clinton, but I do.
All right, so take a look out for that page 6 column when Hillary Clinton and Bo are at Rayo's sharing an Italian meal. It'll probably be happening soon.
Carlo, you're going to have to book Hillary Clinton now. That's what he's saying to you, is you're going to get on the phone now.
We got to take her out to dinner first. Make
that's good. We got to soften her up a little bit. Yeah. But thank you very much.
We'll see you next week.
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II, one that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.